Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. We're going to continue with our new unit on exponential functions. So yesterday we learned about exponential functions and we're going to continue today. We're actually going to look at some graphs and learn how to write the equation of the function based on a graph. So right now I have a do now for you. So why don't you pause, take a second and see if you can fill in this chart. Okay, so it's telling us that the amount of matter halves every year, meaning it's cut in half. So initially, that's 0 years. We had 3,200 grams. Then after 1 year, we had 1,600 grams. After 2 years, we had 800 grams. After 3 years, how many grams did we have? We need to take 800 and times it by a half. You can use your calculator, and it is 400. Then in 4 years, we need to take that 400 and times it by a half. I have 200 grams. Then in 5 years, we again need to multiply by 1/2. So take 200 times it by 1/2, and we get 100. Then in 6 years, 100 times 1/2 is 50. And then one more time, because that's all we have room in our chart for, 7 years, we're going to times 50 by 1/2, and we're going to get 25. Okay, now I know it doesn't say, but I'd like us to write the equation. So this is a new skill, but we did talk about the equations of exponentials yesterday, and we talked about them being in this form, where A is your initial amount, or your y-intercept, that's the same thing, and B is your multiplying factor. Okay, so in this example here, what's my initial amount? My initial amount is 3,200, and then in the parentheses is what I am multiplying by. Well, what am I multiplying by? I'm multiplying by 1/2. And then it's always raised to the x. So right now we are going to make equations based on a graph. And I think the easiest way to do this is to make a table with any points that we see. So in number 1, we have this graph. Let's make ourselves a table. So I see a nice point, and what I mean by nice is it's where the boxes intersect. I see a nice point here. And I see a nice point here. So that first point is 0, 2. So my y-intercept is 2. And that next point is 1, 6. That's all I can really see, but that's all we really need. So I need 2 things. I need the y-intercept, which actually we have. As long as we know when x is 0, what is y? That's our y-intercept. And we need to know our multiplying factor. What am I multiplying to get from 2 to 6? Okay, I am multiplying by 3. Now, another way to figure this out, if sometimes the numbers aren't easy to just kind of look at and say, oh, what am I multiplying by? So you're going to take the bottom number, and to figure out what you're multiplying by, you're going to divide to go up in the chart. So if I want to know 2 times what is 6, I can do in my calculator 6 divided by 2. So if I want to work kind of backwards and I want to say 2 times what is 6, well then I'm going to kind of go up the chart and I'm going to do 6 divided by 2. Okay, because 2 times 3 does give me 6, and 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. That tells me what the multiplying factor is. So now I have everything I need. I have the y-intercept, which is 2, and then in the parentheses goes my multiplying factor. I'm multiplying by 3, and it's always raised to the x. Okay, and it doesn't ask, but this is an exponential growth because we're multiplying by a number bigger than 1. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so here we have. You might be able to tell based on our lesson from yesterday that this is going to be decay. The graph is going down. let's make ourselves a chart. Okay, you always want to start with any numbers you have all the way to the left. You want to work with your left to the right. So the first number I see all the way to the left is when x is -1, y is 4. That's this point that I just marked in purple. -1, 4, and then 0, 1. And that's all I can really see as far as like when I say good points, as far as points that are kind of easy to identify. Okay, so now I know my y-intercept, 0, 1, so I know it's going to start when I write my equation. I know I'm going to put a 1 here, and then I have a parenthesis, and then I have an x, and in that parenthesis is the multiplying factor. 4 times what gives me 1? 4 times what number gives me 1? That's tricky. So if you want to work up instead of down, if I want to figure it out, maybe using my calculator, I can do 1 divided by 4. And if we go to our calculator, we can do 1 divided by 4, and that tells me it's 0.25. 0.25. So what that means is I can look at this in two ways. The multiplying factor is in fact 0.25. So let's fill that in. And we are done with the problem. But I do want to just show you one more thing. 4 times 0.25 gives me 1. Again, if I'm working backwards and I want to figure it out, 1 divided by 4 gives me 0.25. Okay, let's try another one. Okay. So let's make our table. Okay, let's look at our good points. That would be, I only have 2 on this one. 0, 2, and 1, 10. Okay, so my y-intercept is 2. It crosses the y-axis at 2. So when I go to write it out, I know that I'm going to have 2, and then I'm going to have a parenthesis, and then to the x. And that parenthesis is whatever my multiplying factor is. 2 times what gets me to 10? 2 times what gets me to 10? Well, that's 5. Again, if you're not sure, work backwards. Do in your calculator 10 divided by 2, and it gives you 5. Don't be confused by that x. It's part of the picture. Okay. And just as a little review, this is a growth because our multiplying factor is bigger than 1. Okay. Take a look at number 4. We have a lot of numbers here. We might not need them all, but let's write them anyway. So I have 4 good points, and what's nice is they put them in as that you could see the points. They drew dots for you. So -3, 8, -2, 4, -1, 2, and 0, 1. Okay, so right away I know my y-intercept is 1. So when I write out my equation, I know it's going to be 1, then parenthesis, something to the x. I need to figure out my multiplying factor. 8 times what is 4? 4 times what is 2? 2 times what is 1? It's always going to be the same number. If you're not sure, again, just work backwards. I'm going to write it on the other side here. Do 4 divided by 8. And when you do that, you get 1/2 or 0.5. It doesn't matter how you write it. Either 1/2 or 0.5. Try another one. Do 2 divided by 4. 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. Or again, your calculator might tell you it's 0.5. It's the same thing. Or do 1 divided by 2. Again, you get 1/2 or 0.5. In this case, we just had extra points to work from. We really only need 2 points if one of them is the y-intercept. We need the y-intercept and another point. So the multiplying factor, you can write 1/2 or you can write 0.5. It is the same thing. Okay, and then just as a little check, if you wanted to try in your calculator, 8 times 1/2 does give me 4. 4 times 1/2 does give me 2. Two times 1/2 does give me 1. Okay. Let's take a look at 5. Remember, we always want to get the points that we can, and we want to start at the left. So I want to look at first the -1, 9, and then 0, 3. Now I only have 2 points here, and that's okay. I can work from that. I do have the y-intercept, 0, 3. So when I write out my equation, I know it's going to start with 3, and then I have a parenthesis to the x. Okay, so 9 times what is 3? Maybe we're not sure. So if you need to work backwards, then do 3 divided by 9. 3 divided by 9, you're going to get in your calculator 0.333, 3333, 0.3 repeating. Just hit math, enter, enter. We never want to round. So 0.333 is 1/3. Just hit math, enter, enter. I can't show you because my calculator is not exactly yours. So I can do the 3 divided by 9, but then I can't show you. At this point, you would hit math, enter, enter. And it tells you it's 1/3. Okay. 1/3 makes sense because this graph is going down, which means it's a decay. 1/3 is a decay because it's less than 1. Okay, a couple more to do. Can you try 6 and 7 on your own? Pause, and then when you're done, come back and I'll go over them. Okay. So in 6, we'll make our table. I have the point -1, 8, and I have the point 0, 2. Okay, so I know my y-intercept is 2. I need to figure out 8 times what gives me 2. I'm not sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my calculator and do 2 divided by 8. To go up in the chart, just do division. So 2 divided by 8 will tell me 2 divided by 8, I get 1/4, 0.25. You can make it a fraction. If you want to leave it as 0.25 because the decimal does stop, that's okay. 1/4 I meant to write, I'm sorry. So let's write this out. Y equals 2, parenthesis, either 0.25 or 1/4 in the parenthesis to the x. Actually, I'll write it both ways. Okay. This is a decay because the graph is going down and because 1/4 or 0.25 is less than 1. All right, let's take a look at 7. Hopefully you made your chart. 0, 10, and 1, 5. Okay, so I know my y-intercept is 10. So I know that I'm going to do this. Raised to the x, 10 times what is 5? Maybe I'm not sure. So I'm going to do 5 divided by 10, and that's going to give me 1/2 or 0.5. Either way, you could put 1/2 in the parenthesis or 0.5. This is another decay. The graph is going down, and the number in the parenthesis is less than 1. Why don't you try 8, 9, and 10 on your own now. Pause the video, come back, and I'll go over them. Okay, so if we make our chart, I have 0, 8, and 1, 4. Remember, I'm getting these from just the dots, from the good points, 0, 8, 1, 4. So y equals 8, parenthesis. Well, how do I get from 8 to 4? 8 times what is 4? Not sure. So let's do 4 divided by 8. And again, it's going to give me 1/2 or 0.5, the same thing. So it doesn't matter which one you write inside the parentheses. Another decay. There's a lot of decay examples here. Okay, let's take a look at number 9. Okay, remember you want to start all the way to the left. So the first good point I see is -1, 5. I just marked it in purple so you can see what I'm talking about. And 0, 1. Okay, so I do know my y-intercept is 1, so it's going to start with a 1, parenthesis to the x. 5 times what is 1? Not sure. So let's work backwards and let's do 1 divided by 5. 1 divided by 5 is 1/5, or your calculator will tell you 0.2. Again, it doesn't matter, however you want to write it. I tend to like to write it as a fraction, so that's how I'm going to write it there. Okay, and the last one. Zero, 2, and 1, 6. That's the only 2 points I have. We only need 2 points as long as one of them is the y-intercept. So then we have y equals 2, parenthesis to the x. I don't know what goes in that parenthesis yet. This is a growth because the graph is going up, okay, which means the number in the parenthesis will be bigger than 1, will be greater than 1. 2 times what is 6? Well, 2 times 3 is 6, okay? But if you weren't sure, or you just want to check, sometimes we just want to check to make sure, do 6 divided by 2. And that's going to tell me that it's 3. 3 is going to go in that parenthesis. 2, parenthesis, 3 to the x. Makes sense. The graph looks like growth, and the 3 is bigger than 1. So that shows that it's growth. Okay. There's an exit card for you to do. I'd like you to do that one on your own. I'm not going to go over that one. And please submit all of these notes. Thank you. Bye.